We got Keith in the waiting room.
Oh yeah,
Should we
bring
add
him in. That's perfect.
You have to imagine Blue Ghost was running on ramp to, make it to the moon.
Undoubtedly, you can't get to the moon if you're taking 45 days to close your books every month. It's impossible. What do you think, Keith? Is it possible?
Well, the future's on ramp, so all the companies that want to create the future hopefully are saving time and money on ramp.
Yes, I love it. Can you give us the update? What's going on with ramp? They seem to be on a tear. Valuations never been higher.
Actually, I would push back and say take a victory lap. I know the job's not done. Eric has been very clear about that, but I feel like you can take a little bit of a victory lap, and probably more this year to come, given the momentum.
Well, the amazing thing about ramp is the value proposition, has been clear from the beginning. We're going to save you time. We're going to save you money. And now there's empirical evidence across any type of company. We can show that, 5% this, 10% that. So it's very obvious. And the CFO world is one of the most archaic parts of any business. Even the most cutting edge organizations typically have a very archaic, call it analog CFO function. Yeah. And Ramp has the vision of we're going to digitalize and bring the CFO function and all of finance into the modern age and use the same tools, same techniques, ssame data, same software, same SaaS tools that everybody else in your organization uses. And that's why it's such an exciting vision. Like the valuation, is somewhat art, not science. But the reason why investors all across the globe are ecstatic about, investing in Ramp at any point is because we have this vision of changing and transforming the CFO suite. And every company has this broken engine, has an old engine from the 1800s or 1900s. And we're going to bring the engine of finance into the 22nd century, first to 21st century. AI will probably bring us into the 22nd century with Ramp 2. So that's why everybody's excited. The thing that's special about the company, though, in the short term is usually at this level of scale, companies slow down. The product velocity slows down. The quality of talent decreases. Yeah. We have a reversion to the mean, so to speak. And Ramp, if anything, is firing on all cylinders. The product velocity is increasing. The quality and insights of the product and the team are improving. The intern classes for the last 2 years are by far the best intern classes anywhere in the globe. So that's the future. And so that's why this round is very exciting, because it's a prediction for the future based upon a lot of savvy people who get access to all the best companies, that Ramp still has the highest slope, which is, a play on their metaphor.
Huh. Do you think that's because Eric and Kareem are second-time founders? Like, can you break them down as founders, and what makes them able to stay on the just insane cadence going into year 6, going into year 10? How do they have so much energy?
Great question. I wish I knew the answer, because I would love to invest in more. Yeah. So if you can come up with a formula or predict a formula, that's great. Yeah. But having worked with them now for over 5 years, I think there's a couple ingredients. One subtle ingredient is Eric has amazing marketing instincts, and you really can't train this. The best CEOs are the chief marketing officer for the company. Sure. And, Eric entered originally a space that was quote unquote crowded. There were large incumbents, there were other funded startups, and we were able to cut through the clutter immediately. And he deserves the credit for being able to clarify succinctly, powerfully, and communicate the value proposition of Ramp, and then reinvent that every year or two to make it broader, more relevant, more impressive, actually. Kareem, is definitely setting the engineering both tempo and quality bar, and has been from the beginning. And I think the combination is really interesting. And, maybe a global point is, if you look at some of the other heroic companies in people's portfolios, let's say Stripe, you have 2 brothers. So you're getting 2 executives for one. I think, in Ramp, there's you're getting 2 CEOs for one. Yeah. And so I think at other amazing companies, that incredible synergy between 2 incredibly talented people, where you're always on the same page and you really reinforce each other, is very rare. And so if I can find 2 other founders that are that much in sync, that might be the reason to invest, actually.
Yeah. Well, what are you seeing for young Gen Z founders? There's this narrative oh, Gen Z hasn't produced their Zuck yet. What's your take on that? And what would be some advice for, the younger entrepreneurs who are coming in, maybe deciding between hey, I build a ChatGPT wrapper, make some money. Maybe it's not a VC backable company, but it gets me paid versus let me take a big shot at something massive? Like how do you counsel people these days?
I don't think there's a formula that works for building an iconic company. Like,
Sure.
as you pointed out, Zuckerberg was his first company.
Yeah.
Eric and Kareem did build a company, did sell a company. So I don't think there's a one size fits all formula. I think it really comes down to, do you have a vision of what the world needs? And do you have a strategic advantage in your own traits, your own personal superpowers that maps to that problem set? And if you have one when you're 19 years old or 20 years old or 21 years old, it might be a really good idea to proceed. If you don't have that combination of a vision and your own superpowers, then learning, building, working with other talented people might be a really good sort of formula. For those of you who are sports fans, there's this epic debate constant in football about, you draft a rookie quarterback in the first round. Do you start that quarterback and do they learn, trial by fire? Or do you sort of sit them on the bench for a year or two, have them carry the clipboard around and occasionally, enter a game that's, over, so to speak? And I've studied this actually empirically, and it's really interesting. There are Hall of Fame quarterbacks of both sort of backgrounds, career progressions. The career progressions of those who start right away, typically the first season, the performance of the quarterback is miserable. It's the worst year of their career, almost without fail. Interception to touchdown ratio as a specific illustration. The people who sit on the bench, though, for 2 or 3 years, and put aside the opportunity costs there, when they start, they don't have an upside down intercept to touchdown ratio. So they do learn things. And so it depends upon the quality of the team. Anyway, I think it's most useful most of the time for founders to work in an outstanding organization for a year or two before starting their own company. You get a feel for a taste of what great is, like what excellence really means, excellence quality, excellence in driving an organization forward. And I think there isn't a great substitute for that. But if you're really ready to go, there are people who learn better by being told, I'm throwing you in the pool, learn to swim.
I love it.
Yeah. A question I have is, you obviously noted earlier that ramp was already a pretty competitive category. People thought that it was not, a lot of people had made a bet and were kind of ready to just watch the category play out. Do you see categories today that are like fintech in 2020 when you made what I believe was your first time investing in ramp, that are ripe for a team to come in and take this sort of new approach, kind of potentially invert the value prop in the way that ramp did? Have you identified anything there, or is there kind of categories that you would like to invest in?
Well, I was fortunate. It was in 2019. I had a fair amount of expertise in the space. And I'd come to the conclusion that there's massive opportunity in replacing Amazon business card, let alone this bigger vision of, digitalizing the CFO's world. But the people that were funding other operations, those founders and teams, were missing some key ingredients and were kind of naive about some stuff, underwriting specifically, but there's other points. So actually unusual for me, I was proactively trying to find high quality founders that were interested in this problem set. And then Deli unfortunately intercepted Kareem playing a video game, having listened to me, probably annoyed by me pontificating every day that we need to find people to, kind of compete with Brax or Amex and blah, 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 Divvy and all this stuff. And then he actually walked into my office and I was in shock. He said, I think I found 2 founders. And I was like, really? But he turns out he did. We had actually been pitching other founders and trying to recruit people to do this. So I don't usually do this, but I have a lot of expertise in the area. So I'm not usually proactive about trying to find investment opportunities. Right. And then similarly, when I was working at Founders Fund at the time, it was a very non-standard Founders Fund investment in many, many ways. The most acute one being, if you have all these competitors that are doing well, what's the monopoly story? Yeah, totally. And there is a monopoly story. I believe ramp will be a monopoly, but imagine pitching the investment team at Founders Fund, the monopoly story in 2019 in a category that includes Amex. Actually, SVB even had a product in the market, Brax and Divvy, very well funded, with quote unquote traction. So, it took a little bit of massaging. Fortunately, Brian Singerman also saw the potential at the time and really was alienated by some of the other founders too. So that helped correct the anti-monopoly, crusade.
That's great. Are there any categories that you're looking for right now? Hunting for founders?
obviously everybody talks about AI all the time.
Sure.
And I think there are opportunities in AI that probably fit that characteristic where people have assumed there's a winner or winners, or,
Sure.
whether an application layer, foundational model layer, or somewhere else, infrastructure layer. But perhaps the right founders, it's now 5 to 10 years into that story.
Sure.
And sometimes it takes a lot of time to bake before you get the next generation of founders who have insights into what could be reinvented. And the thing about this is kind of what SpaceX did, in some ways. The rockets was like, the rockets were really good, but they were invented in the 1960s in the United States. And Elon waited about 20 years, maybe 30 years, to reinvent rockets. And then Rocket Lab, which has a very competitive offering for certain kinds of payloads, was another 20 years post SpaceX. So sometimes you just have to let the wave, sort of go on for a while before you have a vision about how to reinvent it. And then it's the right founder. So I would love to invest in something that's a next generation replacement for LLMs, not a better LLM, but something that will transforms a pretty good double entendre, but that's something that would be a complete, it would make LLMs obsolete. That would be a cool investment.
Yeah.
Yeah. How durable do you think the AI revenue is today? You obviously were around for the .com era and companies going public, with little to no revenue, 5 million in revenue going public, right? The counterpoint today is that we have, great private companies with 9-figure run rates, that are growing tremendously fast. But, we've talked about this on the show before, this idea of like easy come, easy go, right? So if you can create a bunch of traction really quickly, how durable is that? Do you think that the companies that are, adding 10 million of ARR every month are, sort of durable yet? Are they going to be leaders in 5 years? What's your take there?
Well, there's a quality of revenue, and it's different. Like, for example, OpenAI, most of their revenue comes from ChatGPT subscriptions. That's pretty durable.
Yeah.
Consumers or people using it, for business applications, but on an individual basis.
Totally.
There are revenues you can get that are more like pilots.
Yeah.
And, those are completely non-durable. And then there's somewhere between, like if you sell to an enterprise and they roll out to the entire organization, this AI-based product, the chance that they're going to swap, in any short term is very, very low.
Yeah.
So if you get through IT, you get through procurement, you have a champion and you change business processes within a very large Fortune 1000 organization, that's pretty damn, scalable, durable revenue sustainably for probably 5+ years. And so those kind of companies, those AI companies, are in pretty damn good shape, in my opinion. But you do see people adopting something as kind of like a trial. Like, my board told me there's this AI wave. I need to test out this, and this, and have an answer to my board. That revenue is very precarious. Another set of revenues is around training and post-training. I think the advances in AI are so fast that the way we build models today with fine-tuning and different kinds of training may be also obsolete a year, 2 years from now. So there may be models that are built that don't require any human training. So revenues that are built on, and companies that are built on that kind of revenue may not be as durable as people think either.
Yeah, while we have you here, what's your take on one of the hotter categories in deep tech, humanoid robots? Everybody's got a take because I think they rightfully should, but I'm guessing you have something spicy for us.
Well, spicy is that, look, the Chinese are ahead of us, and it's very dangerous politically, geopolitically. I think the administration is going to have to take some action there. I think you have large companies like Meta, publicly embracing this, and their CTO is responsible for this. So it's a very top-down initiative. You have a lot of startups. We funded several at KV. It's probably the hottest sector among VCs right now. Is robotics startup, walks in. It's like, okay, how much money do you want? And the valuation is going to be hundreds of $1 million. So, and then Tesla's had a lot of progress. Like, actually, I think some of the private progress is better than the public stuff. So it's very impressive. So I think the sector will be successful for somebody. I think as a VC right now, it's really hard to invest in the sector given the proliferation of startups, all with high potential, the prices you'd have to invest at.
Well, also the monopoly,
to make money.
It's unclear that there will be monopolies, yet some of these companies are being priced that way. One of the concerns that I have is I think we need to learn from DJI. We need to understand that they were able to flood the market with products that they were selling for less than it costs them to produce, right? If you just take apart some of these, products and you understand the component costs, it's actually more than what the retail price is. And Unitree is doing the same thing right now, right? You can go on Unitree and buy a humanoid, and you imagine they're pretty happy with how the DJI rollout went, and they want to do the same thing again.
This is why I think geopolitically the Trump administration is going to have to address this. I think robotics have military applications too. So not only do you have this, imagine the data collection potential, but the military applications of a robot that can run 17 miles an hour. So yeah. I would be shocked if this administration doesn't figure out a way to ban Chinese robots before it's too late.
Totally. Yeah, with DJI, there's this idea that you're not too worried about the drone in your closet because it's zippered in, the box that it came in. And there's the idea that okay, in this doomsday scenario, the drones take off and, become these sort of weaponized devices. But a humanoid who's doing your laundry and then can turn around and,
just get up any moment,
take you out is a totally different story. So I think that you have a good point
also
there.
Training data. I mean, there's a lot of dangers. And so I think this is a real political issue that needs to be top of mind. Once we get through TikTok, which will happen sooner rather than later, I think robotics and humanoid robots are particularly severe threat. And so that said, we will need an American competitor one way or the other. The world is going to develop at some point humanoid robots that are effective. And it'd be better if American competitors are great.
Yep.
But we really need to slow down the Chinese progress, especially if it involves subsidization by the CCP.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing that's been interesting is seeing how Uber's been positioning themselves in the context of autonomous driving, right? They're basically, DAR has positioned the company to be like a booking.com for autonomous vehicles, giving you an opportunity to potentially talk your book a little bit. Does Traba, and I don't know if you can speak to this, but does Traba have a position where, today they're using sort of human capital across the sort of network of customers that they have? Is there a world where, I'd be curious if you could speak to sort of long-term potential of a humanoid through Traba?
Well, I think not immediately. I think if you look at the tasks in light industrial warehouses where Traba specializes, a lot of those tasks are not yet ready for robotic intervention. However,
but 10 years from now,
if Traba is succeeding in running an organization, the most sensitive part of a light industrial operation is the human labor, interaction, quality control, reliability, all of those things. If you get the credibility of making a business more successful, you may be a great pathway to introduce more and more technology.
Sure.
So you may not obviate humans, you may supplement humans, you may introduce a combination that does some humans and some robotics. But it's some company from afar that doesn't understand how a warehouse works, that doesn't understand real workers and what real workers' needs are, and tries to run a mixed system without having any understanding of real people. I don't think it's going to be very successful, and I don't think we're ready to rip out, in the long tail fragmented sense, light industrial. The investment required for robotics to rip out all the humans isn't going to be economically feasible. Amazon may be able to justify the R&D plus the fixed cost. But
no, and we had Ryan Peterson on the show last week talking about how the bar to clear if you want to replace humans is so high, because we're pretty good at what we do, right? We've got all this ability to an agency, and it's very clearly going to be the same type of situation within warehouses as in ports.
But over 20 years, I could see Traba introducing more and more technology to their current customer base. Say, look, we've already satisfied you. We're delighting you. Trust us. This is going to make you more efficient, more competitive, more scalable, et cetera. And so that could be a long-term strategy that makes tons of sense for the company and for their customer base.
Yeah. How do you think about the rollout of humanoids, specifically around depreciation in the EV space? We've seen massive depreciation on the consumer side, right? Somebody buys a Model Y, it's worth, $30,000 less a few months later, right? This sort of extreme depreciation. Do you see that as potentially a headwind for the rollout of humanoids, where factories basically say, hey, look, I think your tech has potential, but if I just wait a year, I can get a much better robot for the same price?
Well, I don't think anybody really knows on the decay curve, because what does wear and tear do to these robots? And what functions too? It may be very different. If you ask robots to do this versus this, but a year, are they completely dysfunctional? Imagine a simplified metaphor. If you have weights like a gym at home, could probably last for a decade easily, like your squat rack and your weights.
Point.
You throw them in a commercial gym, those things are going to show wear and tear in the first year.
Especially you and Barry's. You and Barry's. They got to change the treadmill out every day after you at Barry's, I'm sure.
Literally, like the wear. So it does depend upon the use. And I don't think anybody knows really what that like curve looks like. And then that affects the economics, like how prudent, just on a purely rational basis, is using a robot to do X, Y, or Z, because you don't really understand that trade right now. But the only way to really do that is you have to throw some robots at some problems and then monitor what breaks why and how fast and how expensive are the replacement parts.
Yeah.
Totally.
What about the strategic Bitcoin reserve? Do you have a take prepared for that yet?
Yeah, I'm probably not the biggest fan. I mean, I'm very supportive of the Trump administration. I think almost everything they've done has been really good and really strong, and I've been very impressed. I probably, if I was going to do it, would have done it Bitcoin only.
Sure.
I don't think we need to do it, but if we were going to do it, I don't think we kind of stepped in the middle of a bunch of messaging problems by like including a bunch of other cryptocurrencies. But I'm not the biggest fan of like the government doing performing business functions, period. Sure. So I don't like the sovereign wealth fund either. I mean, I'm happy to manage it if they need, if KV wants to, if they need KV, if they need professional managers, we'll probably do it. But
that's great.
The reality is, I don't think mixing business function and politics is a good idea. I think you should separate those. And free enterprise works really well. Capitalism works extremely well, and the government should do, protect the American people, defend the border, et cetera. And I don't see any, the only argument for the Bitcoin strategic reserve is obviously we do have gold reserves.
Yep.
And if you believe the metaphor that the future of store of value is like gold, you can talk yourself into it. But I don't think it's the most compelling thing.
There was a good point.
The administration,
like the strategic reserve, could just be Bitcoin we seize from criminals, right?
Yeah.
And it just goes in a fund.
Actually,
and
we just don't sell
it for that too. Yeah, I mean, obviously the FBI and other people, Treasury winds up getting their hands on a lot of valuable assets.
Yep.
And that could be a good way to fund it without taking American tax dollars. I think the burden, and I think Doge is showing this. Is really setting a great example here. Is the burden for taking $1 from an American family should be increased by an order of magnitude. The justification should go up. Not that there's never a justification, but we need to raise that bar. The dollar belongs to the people who earned it, barring the most extraordinary justification for it. We can't have these frivolous soft justifications or low ROI justifications. It really belongs to the people who create the value.
Interesting.
Well said.
Yeah, you're spending more time in DC. Do you think that there's a potential for startups, or specifically like defense tech startups, like to move offices there earlier, or like actually like build companies there?
I don't know. I think for non-defense startups, I would recommend starting an early stage company in DC. Obviously, the people who are already successful are spending more time in DC, which is valuable to me to some extent. But I think if you're an early stage company that's not really targeting the government as your first customer, federal, in some way, then I think it's probably a mistake right now. That could change in 5 or 10 years, and maybe there's a better ecosystem there.
Yeah,
I don't know the defense landscape and how fast the Defense Department's going to innovate. We'll see. I mean, there are people in the administration who believe that reform is going to be fast and furious in the Defense Department, and that we need it from a budget perspective. The Defense Department needs to do more with less.
Yeah.
And so, but until the proof's in the pudding, I don't know how vast the opportunity is right now.
We have time for maybe one more question. I'm curious to get your take on Sundar. Do you think he's still got a job in a year from now? The rollout of AI across the Google ecosystem has been atrocious from my view, and I think consumers feel this. John always jokes. He's like, I pay for Gemini. I don't know where to find it, but it's cool when it pops up. He seems to be underperforming dramatically in the context of Satya. What's your take on that whole situation?
Well, he seems to be outperforming Tim Cook, which you've read the latest announcement.
At least they have models that they've trained that are good.
Yeah, for those that missed it, Apple just said we're delaying our Siri
2 years.
2 years, something like that.
2 years is
so
like,
long.
As other people have pointed out, 2 years in an AI world is an eternity. You
It's
might as well
an
say I'm
eternity.
delaying something for 20 years or
it's
like
crazy.
2 generations at this point.
It's crazy.
I think that's a serious problem. And I'm an Apple fanboy forever, have been
Same.
forever.
Yep.
So I think it's pretty devastating that they're so far behind. I think Sundar made several miscalculations. And I actually do think that Microsoft and Satya got a lot of credit, but I think they're seeing some of the downsides to some of their strategies now. Like I think they are going to wind up not having quite as much of a strategic lock on AI as they thought they were. I think that said, they maybe played the cards the best they could. You can't always control everything. But I think the world is changing really rapidly, and the people who control the future of AI may not be at Microsoft.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
Well, thanks for stopping by.
Pleasure.
We love having you. You're welcome anytime. Anytime there's breaking news, well, I'm sure I'll give you a call. This was fantastic. We're going to hop on. Keep talking about Ramp. We're going to Packy McCormick next. So
awesome.
Thanks for stopping by, Keith. We'll talk to you soon.
Great to chat.
Have a great day.